Hey guys, we're here, and the interview, the episode you're about to watch is with myself and Jesse Elder. So before you jump into this, if you've already looked, or maybe you know who Jesse Elder is, you might be thinking, how is this relevant to me as a startup cannabis entrepreneur or as a business owner in the cannabis industry? Again, whether you're a plant-touching business or not. And that's exactly one of the reasons why we launched this, because the phrase is, before you jump into the episode, the phrase is this: you can't read the label if you're inside the jar. So part of our mission, in fact, a driving force of our mission, is to bring folks to the proverbial table that bring a different perspective. They allow you and challenge you to look through a different lens at your business. You see, because if all we did was bring cannabis CEOs and the latest, greatest marketing company and the Facebook ad guy who knows how to do the CBD ads, you're gonna get a lot of the same. You can't read the label if you're inside the jar. Stay tuned, guys. This is gonna be one of the most impactful episodes that, honestly, that I have ever had the pleasure of being an interviewer for, and one of the coolest guys you're ever gonna meet. Stay tuned, guys. Jesse Elder's coming right at you. Weed to no basis. Hey guys, this is Rick coming at you with Weed to No Basis, the podcast for all things cannabis business related. Are you an entrepreneur? Have something you wanted to create, something you wanted to bring to life in the cannabis industry? Maybe you've always wanted to partake in one of the biggest industries in modern day history. This is the podcast to listen to. One of the reasons why we're here, Weed to No Basis, with Jesse Elder, is because he's not a cannabis entrepreneur. And that sounds counterintuitive, but right. It's actually, in my opinion, one of the things that makes us unique. And it's something we talk about in our incubator, is how to find something that makes you unique. So as we were kind of talking here before we went live, we were batting some ideas around and just reconnecting. And there was a phrase I shared with you about you can't read the label if you're inside the jar.
Right.
So for the folks who are listening and going, well, this isn't a cannabis CEO. This isn't the leading marketing guy in all of marijuana. This is Jesse Elder, the founder of...
Set it up and tee it off.
Set it up and tee it off.
One real quick, and I really appreciate getting to dive in here, because we've orbited so many times, and we just have so many things that we have in common. Very quick context and maybe qualification. When I was a kid, I started doing martial arts, fell in love with it, but never went to school, never took a test, never sat behind a desk. My formal education consists of my driver's license. That's the only test I've ever taken. And as a result of that, I've been split testing paradigms pretty heavily since I was 17 or 18 years old. And I started to question everything. I started to question religion and theology, and then I started questioning reality and mindset and psychology. And instead of just accepting what I heard or read or anything, I thought, well, let me just test this and find out. So I've always sort of taken this trajectory through life, doing things that fascinated me and motivated me, and that led to training and teaching in martial arts. It led to competing and fighting in these god-awful, no-holds-barred fights at Sneakers on Pyramidal back in the day.
Yeah.
No rules, no weight limit, no time limit, no safety equipment. Just two dudes get in there and just beat the hell out of each other until the fight's over. And then usually one guy gets carried out, and then the other guy goes and does shots.
What was your record?
9-1.
Holy jeez.
Yeah, it was a beautiful laboratory, and I became addicted, not to the violent aspect of it, but I became addicted to the relationship between mindset, behavior, and results. And I started to see direct correlations between my own inner dialogue and the thoughts that I was entertaining, that those thoughts became feelings, and then those feelings became beliefs. Those beliefs started determining my behavior and what I even thought was possible or impossible. And then I ended up opening a school, and it was successful right away because I loved to teach. I didn't know squat about marketing. I didn't know anything about selling. In fact, I had a lot of beliefs around money and growth and all that kind of stuff, but I just loved teaching. And so I just taught all the time. And as a result of continuing to question what was possible, and doing so in an unregulated industry, which martial arts was then and still is now, we were able to test aggressively. without worrying about oversight or even industry norms, because the industry norms were not something that I wanted to replicate. Most martial arts instructors, they got to marry up if they want to pay their bills, and it's like not a good existence. So we were always testing, and I started to realize, well, shit, where does the money come from? And one day it hit me, because I was studying all this esoteric stuff, like, oh, you're going to meditate and get in alignment with money, and then, no, you got to hustle and grind. You got to kill yourself now so you can live later. Well, that made no sense. So I thought, well, where does money come from? And one day I was meditating, and it just hit me. I'm like, oh, money comes from other people's bank accounts. It was just this super logical epiphany. I was like, oh, all the money's there. It's just in the wrong account. It's in theirs, not mine. And it's not even going to stay in mine, because it's going to go to my landlord, and it's going to go to my instructors that I want to train and teach. And so I don't even hang on to the stuff. I can just attract it and then direct it, but it's not even mine. So that led to some very interesting marketing campaigns, and it really became people first, and it became about attraction rather than promotion. And next thing I know, we've got 8 martial arts schools, and we're doing a couple million a year. And I had the proverbial 4-hour work week, and which is funny. I was in Austin. When I'm in Texas, I'm in Austin most of the time, and I was at a coffee shop downtown, and I was sitting there writing, and there's this really intense conversation going on, and there's a dude, and the guy's wearing like a skirt, like yoga pants or something, and it's Tim Ferriss, and he's just like doing his pitching thing. And I'm like, anyway, I had the proverbial 4-hour work week because I'd leveraged my time and my energy. But all of that, and maybe this is what's relevant to people that are connected with you, the ability to iterate quickly is a non-linear phenomenon. If you're going to truly disrupt something, either an industry or an entire sector, or you just want to disrupt your own growth trajectory and go as exponential as you can, that's a non-linear experience. So if you want to have non-linear results, then you have to have a non-linear modality. You cannot think A, B, C and expect to get exponential in your results. It doesn't make any sense. So I started to observe in my own instructors and in myself, and I started to go back to these days of fighting when I was trying all these unorthodox training methods. And I started to see correlation. I started to see things that could actually be transplanted from the fighting days and put into marketing and sales training. And then I started to see how what we were doing within the martial arts was actually revolutionary, because it wasn't about punching and kicking. It wasn't about teaching class. It was about helping people become better humans. And once I had that realization, I was like, shit, okay, yeah, I can't keep doing this thing. There is something else that I'm supposed to do. So I ended up selling my schools. At the time I was married, and then once I sold the schools, I got present to some more stuff that was happening in the relationship and realized we were just growing in different directions. So in 2013, it was a hard reset. I sold my schools, left an industry that I'd been in for over 20 years, left a marriage that I'd been in for 11, and it was a total identity-ectomy. Like, it was just a removal of everything I thought I was, and it was a chance to apply all the stuff that I've been learning in a very aggressive reinvention of self. That led to one day I made a video, I put it on Facebook. I had like 300 friends on Facebook, and that video ended up getting more shares than I had friends. I was like, all right, well, this is a sign. Let me do these. Yeah, man. So I just started on my phone. I started making videos, and that was September of 2013. And fast forward, I just kept listening to the audience and seeing what some of their problems were and how I might be qualified to help, and ask questions, and fast forward, and now we've got, I think last month we had just over 60 million people watch those videos, and we've built a great business that is based on a simple premise of ending suffering, because suffering is optional, and pain is a mandatory experience. It's a natural part of life. But
tell me about that. So. A lot of people, they have this avoidance of pain as it's something bad.
It's a huge mistake.
I've always been of the mindset that it's part of our experience as a human being. That
100%.
Sadness and happiness and pain and lack of pain. And one, maybe the amplification of one lets us understand how awesome the other end can be.
Bingo.
More pain means, man, if I can get rid of it, imagine how pain-free I can be. Literally, sometimes I'll have moments I feel sad, not in a bad way, just maybe it's through
part
a movie.
Of being human, man.
Yeah, being human, and rather than try to Tony Robbins it and make it go away, I like to sit in it for a while. So are you saying that we need to, as entrepreneurs or as even humans, just grab those and live in it for a while and experience it?
Yes, 100%, 100%, because this is where the expansion of capacity occurs. The desire to avoid it, and Tony, he's done a great job at doing sort of this mass market personal development, and there's no doubt. I mean, he's the highest paid, most well promoted personal development author in history. In fact, his number one sales guy is a friend and a client of mine, so he hired me to coach him on sales for Tony. So it's kind of interesting, incestuous sales relationship, but
it works.
It works.
Yeah.
But the point is that so much of the popular message is around distraction, sedation, ending the pain. But that's mostly because as a culture, the trend has been towards being so fragile. And if we can just trend ourselves individually towards anti-fragility and to being more resilient than what you're talking about, you feel sad, you hear a sad song, or you see a movie, or you see somebody on the side of the road that's got a cardboard sign, regardless of what your political beliefs or religious beliefs or anything else, that, man, if it tugs at your heart, well then listen to it, pay attention to it. It doesn't mean that you're supposed to do something, but those feelings exist for a reason, and those emotions that we all have, man, that's our GPS. And they're worth paying attention to.
So I'm curious because we're not born with philosophy, we're not born with logic, we're just born a squishy ball of humanity. We're either a boy or a girl, and then we evolve, we grow, and we have our experiences and our environments and all the things that go into becoming an adult, if you will.
Right.
But it's my contention, and I think we're on the same wavelength, that there's some experience that changes us, that makes us or pushes us into who we should be. And I think I read something about you, because I did read about you, and I wanted to, even though I've known you, I really wanted to get to know you more, like your feeds and your videos, and who is this guy with these piercing blue eyes, and how the hell did he end up sitting down with me in San Antonio, Texas on a spring day?
Yeah, man.
But I read something about your father being arrested, and from what I could gather from just the print it was transformational for you. So how did that experience, if that was the trigger, change you or morph you into who you are today?
It was definitely a foundational moment, and you said something that I want to loop back to as well. All of us, we have experiences. I believe that the experiences can change us, but if we dig into that even more, from my perspective, in my experience, it's not the experience itself that changes us, it's our interpretation of the experience.
Gotcha.
Because 10 people can go through the exact same thing and come out with 10 completely different stories. You see this in crime scenes, people can't even say what the guy was wearing, or even if it was a guy. Same event, same thing, but they all have a different story. Take that story, retell it over and over and over and over and over and over, and at some point we'll get into theories on time and how time doesn't actually exist. You actually can't remember the event, you can only remember the last time you thought about it. So that's a pretty trippy way of opening up your beliefs.
It's a mind vitamin.
Yeah. So when people say, "Oh, I've been thinking this for 10 years," no, you haven't. You thought it last Thursday. So it's active. But last Thursday was just a reactivation of the Monday before. So in a very short period of time, it's like you're driving a motorcycle and you're like, well, I've been going this way for 10 miles. Well, change the direction, man. And then you change, and then you're going this way. It doesn't matter where you were before. So anyway, we'll get on that round two. But this idea of having an experience, which is a sort of intense emotional experience, is always up for interpretation. And it's always up even for retelling, because you can, with perspective and wisdom and maturity and maybe some empathy or just curiosity, you can go back to any experience, no matter how traumatic or tragic or painful, and you can extract the wisdom from it. And the experience changes. Because even and I've worked with people who've experienced some horrible physical trauma, sexual stuff and torture and all kind of things. And people say, it happened to me, and they point at their body. But if you're actually in a safe space with the right context, you help people understand that the body that horrible thing happened to, that body doesn't even exist anymore. Your cells are turning over all the time. So within a matter of months or years, you don't even have the same body. So what is it that you're pointing to? You're pointing to the memory.
Interesting. It's almost provocative the way it's framed. It could, I know we're not, there's a philosophical aspect to it, and it is provocative because it could trigger somebody saying, you don't understand though, you don't get it. And what you said is it's the literal truth. Our cells die and they change and they're regenerating, and they say that the day we're born is the day we actually start dying, and so we're changing every single day.
Yeah. All the time.
Interesting.
And that, and you mentioned the word truth, which is a very powerful word. Back when I was 17, 18, and I started questioning all these things. I started questioning my martial arts style that I'd been told was the best style, until I got my ass kicked in a parking lot by some girl's boyfriend who I didn't even know she had a boyfriend. And he bounced my head off the pavement. I'm a second-degree black belt getting the shit kicked out of me. I was like, okay, well, that style didn't work. So then I started training jiu-jitsu, and I started just questioning reality. So I stopped asking myself what's true, and I stopped accepting anything as the truth. And ever since then, all I do is ask myself, not is this true, but is this useful? And so everything that I practice, believe, teach, whatever, is always run through the filter of utility and relevance. If it's not relevant and if it's not useful, then why is it in my head? Why am I spouting it? Why am I even listening to it? So this, back to being an entrepreneur, it's so easy because we do get in these loops and we just don't think very much. And most of us don't even think about thinking. And most of us can't even be present for 20 minutes without fidgeting or doing something. And yet if we will, just be still for 20 minutes and be silent for 20 minutes, the kind of access of information you start to have is ridiculous. Einstein level, Tesla level stuff. So back to the question of my dad being arrested. He was arrested for aiding and abetting illegal aliens because he ran a halfway house.
Aiding and abetting illegal
Aiding and abetting illegal aliens because he ran a halfway house for Salvadoran refugees. And these are people who are fleeing for their lives. This wasn't like an economic situation. They're going to be killed if they stay. And so he ended up giving a couple of them a ride to the bus stop. They got picked up by the Border Patrol, and long story short, my dad got arrested and was eventually convicted. And I was in the courtroom. I was 10 years old in Houston, Texas, when he was convicted. And I remember hearing the foreman of the jury come out and say, "Your Honor, we, the jury, have found the defendant, Jack Elder, guilty." And they started naming off all these counts. Now, I'd eavesdropped enough on the defense attorneys and my mom and dad talking in the trailer that we lived in about what this meant. So the meaning that I then created is, as I'm hearing each one of these counts come down, I'm doing the math in my head, every one of those is 7 years federal.
Wow.
So I'm hearing these counts come down, and in my mind, my 10-year-old brain is sitting there in this church pew in this courthouse, and I'm just sitting next to my mom, my brothers, and my sister hadn't been born yet. And I'm hearing the counts, and I'm going 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, and I'm realizing, shit, I'm never going to see my dad again. And in that moment, I grew up emotionally, and I became a 10-year-old adult, because that was the survival, the protection mechanism of dealing with what I assumed was the reality. Plus then I feel like now I'm the man of the family. I have to take care of my mom and my brothers. And as it turned out, he ended up getting 5 months in a halfway house here in San Antonio, right down the road, actually, on Augusta.
Really?
And they let him out a month early if he promised not to tell the press, because it was such a political football.
Let me ask you a question. So you said you heard that you started counting 7, 14, 21, 28, and then the moment hit, you were going to have to step up. So the equivalent, if we just put it really real, is, as you said it, I was envisioning a Marine or a firefighter running into the fire. Yeah. Just throw everything aside and run into the fire. What would have happened if you had done the opposite? Or what do you think? Or more so is, what about the folks out there who, when these events happen, they choose to not run into the fire? They choose to hunker down or let it blow over. I mean, what then?
Yeah. This is This is very important because these are the events that the interpretation of which set people's trajectory for a lifetime. But that trajectory is always, always malleable. It's always flexible. So when people say, I've had this going on for 30 years, no, you haven't. You've had it going on for about 30 days. You've just gotten really good at telling it over and over and over. So if there is a painful event, and we've all had one, most painful event of my life happened about 45 years ago. It was incredibly traumatic. I was born. And fuck, man, you go from like warm room service 24/7. You got the best house music in the world. Dun, 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 dun. It's like the best, most peaceful thing. And all of a sudden, it's cold and loud and bright. It's horrible. Everything after that is easy in comparison.
That's a awesome analogy.
I mean, seriously,
yes,
has there been anything
like
that could compare to the trauma of that?
No.
All the other stuff is just interesting evolutionary experiences that make for excellent memoirs. That's it.
Wow. I love that. I love that.
So anyway, the whole point about all this trauma, which is real, and this is not to diminish or to take away from anybody's experience, but the trauma that gets locked in our bodies is a result of the retelling of the story. And so having like that event happened when I was 10, and in the scheme of things, this is a very, first world problem. So I thought I wasn't going to see my dad, and it turns out that he was fine. I recognize that in the scope of human experience, that's nothing. And having befriended and learned from people who have actually been through stuff, rape and torture and horrible things, their perspective is masterful, because they've just chosen, even in the moment if they chose to shut down, even in the moment if they chose to ignore, or they chose to take what, in looking back, was a weaker path or a more fearful path. So what? Looking at it now with the perspective of time, with the desire to grow and even alchemize that experience, you can look back at anything from this safe perspective, and using this, I don't know if I'll call it a technique, but it's very much a philosophy that's sort of come to me that I call time piercing. It's all happening right now. Past and future are actually different present moments. And through this uniquely human experience of memory and imagination, we can actually connect with those other aspects of ourself. So the thing that happened when you were 4 or 10 or 26 or whatever that was so painful, well, what if that's like having a friend of yours who went through something tough this morning, and you're on the phone with him, you're talking to him, and how would you talk to him, and what would you say, and how would you be there for them? Well, what if you can be there for yourself with today's perspective, with today's love, with today's empathy, with today's appreciation for the version of you that you think is over, but what if it's not over? What if it's happening right now, and you can actually connect with that version of you in some weird higher vibration? Maybe thought transcends linear time. Maybe that's why when we imagine something that we think is in the future, maybe it's not in the future. Maybe we're actually remembering. Maybe, you 10 years from now is thinking back to launching this media channel. And you today is having this brilliant idea, oh shit, we should do a media channel.
I feel like I'm time traveling and coming back all at one time.
Well, dude, but here's the thing. What if it is happening right now? And like right now, your feet are on the floor, our ass is in the chair, our elbows on the here. So you can say, hey, I'm in 3 places at once. But how can you be in 3 places at once? It's because you're bigger than any of those places.
Interesting.
So what if the we that we think we are, the me that I think I am, the you that you think you are, is bigger than this sensory isolated experience called ego, individuality, this man that you are? What if that's a piece of the larger Rick? And what if the larger part of you is actually far greater and not bound by space and time?
This is mind-bending. It's in a good way. So I'm going to ask you a question, and so I love the discussion. I love this philosophical, kind of untangible, thought provocative discussion. So I want to kind of take that and bring it down to a very
How do we
clear
make it practical?
Yeah, so I gave a talk recently, and I speak about the business of cannabis, strategic thinking, envisioning, planning, execution, tactics. And I gave a talk, and it was a group of young entrepreneurs. And when I say young, I mean not in their business career, I mean literally in their early 20s. Startup companies, very young. And one of the attendees at the end raised their hand. It was a great question. And she said, and not word for word, but essentially, how does somebody who is broke and young get started in the cannabis industry, any industry? So it was, for me, it was curious because here we've had this high level discussion, and I'm beginning to think I may actually be part Zeus. I feel like I'm almost, honestly, like I've been infused with some godly component. And then the question was, how does somebody who's broke and young and doesn't have these means start a business? And
100%. That question comes to me in various forms as well. How does someone who is, and then fill in the blank, if that blank is inherently disempowered, then that's the first place that person has to start. How does someone who is injured and sick become healthy? Well, these words that you're describing are actually reinforcing the thing that you're looking at. Is all of you sick? No. But dude, I've had my knee blown, I had a collapsed lung, I had a concussion, and when I had a collapsed lung and I was sipping oxygen, like could barely breathe, I willed myself to focus on my right hand because it worked perfectly. And so I'm sipping oxygen, just going, man, look at this fucking thing, it's magnificent. And I just would will myself to look at the part of me that actually wasn't damaged, because nature takes care of the rest. So this person says, how does somebody who's broke stop? Broke and poor, two completely different things. You may not have resources, but resources come and go all the time. And they always go to people who are resourceful. So step one, stop acting and talking like a broke person. You are resourceful. The fact that you're here in this room says something about you in this case. The fact that you're asking this question says that you have a level of confidence and curiosity and intrigue, which are very valuable qualities for any entrepreneur. Tell me more about yourself. What else you got going on good for yourself? And you watch that person start to open up, and they stop being that version of themselves. And it doesn't take time. It just takes a little bit of illumination.
Love it. I love it. I love it. I love that there's an element of power in everything that you say, and even the way you project it, and you can even feel the belief, and there's something to that, the intangible. So I know we're kind of getting close to wrap, but something you mentioned, and I've heard you say it, you said it a while ago, but you've also mentioned it in your videos, is antifragile. And I wrote something down. It was, you said antifragile, and then in the next sentence, maybe not verbatim, but resilience has made you indestructible. What does that mean? What does that mean?
The perception of self, first of all. You know, who do we think we are? Because of that particular lung collapsing experience, which happened in the ring, I fought a guy who was 30 pounds, almost 40 pounds heavier than me, and his corner had greased him up with Vaseline because they knew I'd try and take him to the ground, and so I couldn't get a grip, and I got pounded, ended up in the hospital with a collapsed lung. That experience proved to me, to my complete satisfaction, that I am not my body. I have a body, but I'm not my body. Just like the bulbs that are illuminating this, those are not the light. The bulbs are the conduit for the light. The light is a result of the energy that's coming into the bulb. So this body is a bulb, which happens to be right now illuminated with this thing called life. But when the body is done, the energy continues. So who I identify myself is no longer limited to this body, which means I do not care about death. I don't even believe in it. It's not something I found useful.
Interesting. I love it, but there's just the whole anti-fragile. It's just those two words. I know there's a book also about that. But
it's a beautiful philosophy.
It is.
And the best part about it is, and in closing here, that even the attraction that someone might have to this concept of anti-fragility proves that they have a pixel of that in them. And it's that pixel which is craving expansion. And if you'll trend in that direction, if you'll just do things differently, if you'll just, instead of, why not, instead of walking to your car, why not bear crawl? See how that feels. Why not?
I'm going to do that.
Do something different.
Bear crawled
Why
in my
not?
car.
Why not take the stairs one leg at a time? Why not jump up the stairs? You ever try that? You know, all these. How hard is it to do something hard? It's not.
Interesting. I love it. I feel invigorated. I'm a normal gregarious person, energized, and I feel a new. If I thought that this was level 1 through 10, I'm at a 10.5, 11 now, and I feel it amplifying.
That's our frequency, man.
Yeah, I love it. The whole vibe.
Yeah.
I believe that as well. We're all energy and vibes,
100%.
attract vibes.
100%.
So we're kind of wrapping up, but how can people find you? Not literally, but like on the internet
creepy.
or where?
JesseElder.com
JesseElder.com
is a good place. Facebook, always. Instagram, Jesse Elder Live. YouTube, sometimes. Facebook and Instagram right now are the best places.
Nice. Jesse, I really appreciate it.
Rick, thank you, man.
It's been awesome, man. Amazing. It's been awesome. I know we're about to wrap, but it's been, I hope it's been as mind challenging, if you will, for all of you. And review this, go over it. Make it matter and relevant to you as an entrepreneur, because it's not always about hustle, grind, and churning revenue and ROI. It's about what's in here and in here. And that's why people like him exist. You can't read the label if you're inside the jar, and that's why we're here with Jesse Elder today. So thank you so much, brother.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Peace.